I'm Jonathan Hollander. I'm Business Development Director at Applied Biorefinery Sciences. And as the middle word may imply, biorefinery, it's sort of analogous to an oil refinery in that you start with a crude material, which then gets refined through some process engineering into a whole slew of different products, finished products on the downstream side. So we're trying to displace a number of these petrochemicals that would normally come from a barrel of oil with biomass, non-food plant matter and wood resources. So it's biorenewable in that sense. It's both things that are in the energy space as well as in the chemical space. So multi-product platform is really what we do. Okay.
Very different what I do. I'm Ben Gross. I'm the general counsel at Rap Genius, which is a technology company. It started out as a platform to annotate hip-hop lyrics, and it's grown since then into sort of a platform to annotate anything. So you can find sort of music lyrics annotated by our community or by the artists themselves, but you can also find poetry, literature, law, political speeches, the Bible, anything, because it's all sourced from the users. Yeah, that's what Rap Genius does and what I do then.
I wish I could say I had a rap platform. It's much more interesting. My name's Hamish Forsyth. I'm the CEO and co-founder of OneLeap. What we do is we help large organizations be more entrepreneurial. And we do that by leveraging a global community of about 3,500 serial entrepreneurs across 35 countries. And we parachute teams of these serial entrepreneurs, carefully picked, into very senior levels in corporates. And when we're there, we do two things. One, we help them build out innovative new ventures, actually build them, not just make PowerPoint slides about them. And two, we help develop an entrepreneurial type of leadership that makes that work internally. We have spent a lot of time developing not just the community that makes this possible, which is where the magic is, but also the process behind it as well, and that's what we do.
Okay. So I wanted to start by asking about some early challenges you faced and whether or not they were resolved, how you dealt with those challenges. Whoever wants to jump in within this free flow.
For us, financing is always going to be the big one. We're a company of 4 people, so very, very early stage. We were founder-backed for our seed, and now we're really reaching for our first venture-backed project. And being in a capital-intensive industry, venture funders don't really want to spend money on things that they don't see significant amount of salvage value out of. They're going to buy a lot of equipment with their, we're going to buy this equipment with their money, and then if our company went belly up, where do you go with that? So making the adjustment in your pitch to explain why these capital expenditures are necessary is a really, really important thing to communicate to your investor community. And I think that's one that you're constantly battling against when you're in a sort of manufacturing space like we are. Addressing it is, as I say, just about communication of the message and where they're going to extract the value proposition.
Did you find that you had to learn who were the venture investors who were going to be interested in your space, or how did you sort of come up against that?
Oh gosh, yes. It was significantly harder to find the right investor than it is to pitch to them. If they have knowledge of the product category and of this type of investment, then they can understand that concept a lot better than a investor who is unfamiliar with the territory. So I think I wasted a lot of time at the beginning just going after anybody who had the title of an investor, and that was a big mistake for us. Taking the time to do due diligence to find the right person is much more important.
And how did you do that?
It's work in progress, but networking, talking with other companies that are of similar interest, some of our partner organizations. Finding a strategic venture can lead to a investor partner that they have, just continuing to attend events like this, meetups, all sorts of different things. I mean, I'm a serial networker, and that's what you need to do to find the relevant people.
Can I just throw in
Yeah,
one
sure.
more idea that joins that? I think when we got our first series investment, it actually closed. What closed it was, again, networking that brought the investors together. But what actually closed them was we hosted our own event. And we found that a very effective way to pull together the people that we wanted, and that made us valuable to our community as opposed to just attending other people's events. But what was amazing about it is we'd done 3 of these and not really pitched what we were doing, these events involving people that were including potential investors of interest. And then the final night, the third night, we did a demo of our platform and how it all worked, and we made sure that our key investors were there. And so not only did they see the demo, but they saw 100 other people going, wow, this is awesome. And that bit of social proof just pushed it across the line, and that really made a difference for us.
And I think sometimes once you get one investor or a law firm that has connections, like everything just leapfrogs and helps connect. So I think it's very true that early stages you have to network a lot.
Yeah, one thing I would add to that, so I'm kind of an imposter because I wasn't, it's interesting, right, we still consider the company to be very much at an early stage. We've only done a sort of fraction of what we want to do, but we're probably not a true seed stage or early stage company anymore. So I wasn't there, but I was around it, and yeah. So I mean, I think the challenges evolve. But one thing, what I was going to say was that the fundraising is a total mystery, and it's not it's completely contingent on relationships. This has been the Rap Genius experience. It's just there's so much contingency involved, and there's actually a very interesting you can read how the account of the guy's seed stage and Series A stage process, and it's just truly chaos. So and we have it on the site, not a pitch, but you can check it out.
Yeah. How about you? When you got to Rap Genius a little later, but I know that in conversations with you, you told me about some challenges at that stage.
At the current stage?
Sure.
Yeah.
Or when you first arrived.
Yeah, I mean, there's endless challenges. I think it varies by company. For us, like I said, I think we're still very much at a very early stage, but the challenge has transformed kind of into figuring out what it means to not be a total seed stage company and not do totally insane things like our sort of approach to the media and to other things had always been very cavalier, and it's had to kind of change. And our approach to sort of licensing has been similar, and it's had to change. Honestly, the big challenge for us now is actually recruiting. It's become trying to figure out how to get the absolute best people in the door. So, but I think that is a problem of an early stage company.
You don't have any agreements like Google and Apple had that you can't poach the other.
No, we're we're waiting to be asked to join an anti-poaching. We'll know we made it when Google asks us to stop stealing their phones.
Right. Great.
On what?
Just an early challenge.
Oh, an early challenge. Yeah, I mean, I was going to talk about a pivot that we had to do, but I might come to that later. But just briefly, one thing that might really resonate with this audience is, I guess, the psychological shift that you go through when you're starting a company for the first time. Because I think a lot of us here have done well and succeeded by not making too many mistakes, to put it bluntly, right? And what, to me, being an entrepreneur has been about is putting up my hand, saying, I can get this done for you on the deadline, and not really knowing exactly how I'm going to do it a large number of those times. And that is very, very different to the sort of skills and discipline that you bring when you're selected to be a Gates or a Rhodes or a Fulbright or a Marshall Scholar. And that is quite a shift. And it's about a balance. You've got to be comfortable that you can definitely deliver, but you've also got to be comfortable knowing that you're not necessarily going to know how that's going to happen. And that's when you really need to have those networks and rely on partners. And so making that shift in the whole mindset of how you get things done sometimes was probably one of the biggest challenges early on.
Mm-hmm. So on figuring out who you're going to rely on and who you're going to hire, who you're going to partner with, What is that process besides just trying to meet people? How do you figure out who's actually going to be a good fit?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is about, I mean, you can talk to people, you can have lots of conversations, you can, like, X knows Y, and they vet them, and that helps you. But ultimately, it comes down to actually doing stuff. And looking for small, like, pilot opportunities to get to know each other and see how each other works is really important. So Josh here, for example, the CEO of Occam Group, is a company that we're doing some stuff with at the moment, and just the process of going through and working on a joint project together is so much more valuable than just having a conversation. So pick something small that's a pilot, work out whether it works for both of you, and I think that, and I do that for employees as well. Like before I brought them on, I'd say, what can you add to the company? And they would go and do like just a little project. It might just be help us with an event or something, or code something for us, and that's a really good test.
That's a great idea. I was listening to a podcast, and I forget the name of the company, but this fairly big company has completely given up on regular interviews, and it's exactly that. Just do this project for 1 week at this amount, this pay, and then in addition, apparently because that company has a lot of like IMing each other while they're working, instead of not much of the job is actually doing what one does in an interview. The CEO at the final stage IMs with the candidate. So I think just there's something you can get out of an interview, and then probably a lot more out of some project if you can figure out what that project would be. How about you, Ben, in terms of dealing with HR and hiring?
Interviewing is basically impossible, I think we've learned. I think we're constantly, we're in the middle of this right now, experimenting with how our hiring process works. It's different for the technical side versus the sort of, for us, it's sort of the community content side, but both are incredibly challenging. We have experimented with trial periods. I think they come with, it's helpful, but it's also very challenging because we know that we've seen that not sort of giving people sort of like half integration is not always the most productive way to sort of get some, we need people to fully buy into the culture, and like if they don't have full access to everything, they don't have a Rap Genius email address, they don't have access to sort of some private forums and things that we have, and just doing these sort of half measures can be kind of tough, and you really want everyone to sort of buy in. We've had that problem with trial periods. We've also just been kind of rethinking how we interview. We previously had sort of key people for whatever the position was interview independently and try to get to yes. The question is, how can you design an interview where you get to yes, where you're certain that this person's going to be an amazing contributor to the company, and it's almost impossible. It's like, it's almost impossible to, in an hour or two, or however long you design an interview, it's very, very hard to get there. And it's always going to be some kind of risk analysis of what the odds are that this person's really going to be great. And we just sort of, it just happens to be something I'm thinking about a lot right now, but we're thinking about experimenting with a new kind of interview process where we actually figure out what the critical sort of traits and skills that are required for this job are, and then we find someone at the company that we think is exceptionally strong in each of those areas, and then we direct the sort of interviewers to just try to evaluate that thing. Like if we're sort of hiring for a finance job, and I think like sort of attention to detail is an important thing, discretion is an important thing, and it's like, so we find someone that we think has excellent judgment and discretion, find someone who we think is super detail-oriented, and just have them focus on that, and then when we all come together after we have someone on each thing, everyone gives a report on that particular thing, and you sort of hear this whole picture, and it's just like, instead of staring into the abyss of like, how do I come up with an interview that is going to figure out whether this person is amazing forever, you instead have a much more sort of structured thing where you're like, okay, is this person super strong in this particular area that I really understand? Like, I am one of our founders is insanely detail-oriented, twisted kind of person, and it's like, he will be amazing at figuring out, he will know it when he sees it, in a way that I probably wouldn't even. And I think, so I'm excited about trying that, because I think it might make our process better.
And I would think also it's hard with those roles, like it's almost, to try out is great for a program or something like very specific. I like this idea. And then for a role like business development, you can't really test someone, oh, go try to pretend you're us and do some business development. But maybe those jobs are easier to decipher in an interview if that person is going to be personable in that way.
Yeah.
Jonathan, have you had any experience dealing with hiring?
For better or worse, no. But I will make a broader comment that it's never been easier to start a company right now. You can outsource so many different functions of your business to competent teams of people. If you need payroll and technical teams, especially if you're doing something online, there's whole companies, whole worlds out there where you, so long as you have a strong management team to coordinate those activities, you can basically push it off onto other people. I think we were benefited by the fact that we had the right technical people. It was a group of scientists. The technology was spun out of the university where I have an adjunct position. So I think that element needed to be there, obviously. If you're working in the tech space and you don't have a product that works, that's a problem. But with that as a starting platform, we learned the other functions that we needed and were able to find appropriate people when we need to call upon them.
So what sort of outsourcing do you do? Is it manufacturing, so like tolling agreements? Is it a finance function? Like what do you actually outsource and what resources do you use to do that?
Those are some, yes, absolutely. So talking with CFOs, people with better financial background than I would have, connectivity, anybody with access, legal functions, those are the ones that we have needed in the past year or two. Technically, I've worked for online companies in the past, and there, yes, if you need this bit coded, finding a developer was really never hard when you have Elance or Outsource.com. I mean, any of those types of things.
I would just jump in also. I think that it's just always a trade-off though. We've done a decent amount of that, never on the technical side, but on on the bookkeeping side, having external bookkeepers is something that we have, and it's actually, I think, like a total nightmare in some ways because these people have no institutional knowledge. They don't develop you just don't get what you get with an internal person because they have endless questions about booking transactions because they're not part of the company, and they don't see sort of the history. They're not going to be able to bring what sort of an internal bookkeeper would be able to bring in terms of identifying problems or trends or something that's sort of suspicious or whatever. And so it's you can spend a lot of time with people that are supposed to be taking things off your plate, ultimately, in my experience. Although some of it is essential, like payroll, it's like doing payroll yourself is crazy as far as I'm concerned, unless you're like a 1,000 person.
Just one really quick thought there. I mean, maybe one way to reconcile these two observations, because I think they're both right in different ways, is it's kind of where you're at as a company as well. I mean, the reality is once you start to grow a bit, people will not let you get away with systems that in any way drop the ball at any point. But early on, even if an outsource is suboptimal, sometimes you just got to do it, because if you don't do it that way, you will not have enough time to get your business off the ground. And so when you're starting, you can afford to be a bit scrappy, and sometimes what will kill you first is not dropping the ball on systems. What will kill you first is not putting your key people on getting it out the door, be that a product or a service.
Right, I think that's absolutely right. And I think it's again, for me, it just always comes back to recruiting. And at an early stage, if when you're really just starting, not hiring people, it's then I think the only answer is to do that, because you'd be wasting really important time if you key people are booking transactions and trying to. Once you have the opportunity, that's why being good at hiring is so important, because it's if you can get the right people in, you're going to be so much happier than having to deal with contractors.
How are you finding them? since you're at like a larger stage where you're bringing people on at some kind of
The
scale?
outsourced people or the internal people that we're trying to hire?
For your hiring, yeah. Sort of what approach do you have?
So it's all different positions. Different positions are different things. It's like with technical engineering positions, which we are hiring big time for, and it's super hard to find good people. We do, we have people come in cold. We have not had actually a tremendous amount of success with that. We find that we've had more success with going after people, trying to poach people that we think are great. We offer big incentive. We try to, if you pass our technical interview, whether or not you take the job, you get a grant. You get $1,000 for the plaque that we give you. But even then it's super hard. And then non-technical, on the finance thing, like trying to bring in a controller type person, our accounting firm, our sort of external accountants who sort of do our sort of compilation and eventually audit of our books will have a sort of internal recruiting thing. So we're sort of working with a recruiter who has brought some candidates up, which has been decent. On the community content stuff, a lot of it comes from the community. The best folks in the community, we have sometimes hired, and that's because a lot of times people inquire about hey, I love hip hop or I love poetry or whatever, and I want to work there. Always one of our founders' first question is what's your username? What are you doing on the site? Show them that they really know how to use the platform and that they excited about it.
For some of those people who were just users, and I don't know how many people have used Rap Genius before, but it's sort of like a wiki setup. What were those people's jobs?
You mean what are they now?
No, what were they before? They were kind of just on the side.
They're usually pretty young. Honestly, they really have jobs. One of our great college students who just get obsessed with the platform and get obsessed with the community. The guy who sort of runs our community thing who's incredible. He's 21 or 22, and he came out of the community and just was I'm not sure. I don't think he had any significant corporate experience.
That's cool. So time in the hand, no problem. I'd love to hear also the role of investors, and I know some VCs tend to be more hands-on in terms of really guiding a company and acting as counsel, not legal counsel, but counsel on decisions. And sometimes that's welcome, and sometimes that's not welcome. And different founders and different personalities will work better with different types of VCs. I'd love to hear about your experience working with capital.
I think if you have to take money, you should always try and take money that's more than money, i.e. it does come with advice. You don't have to take that advice, but it's really useful to have. And I think in our case, we deliberately, our strategy for investment paralleled our strategy for getting to the people we wanted to get to. So we could have taken investment with a smaller number of people, which is easy for shareholder management. But by deliberately taking a large group of people, that gave us a community of people who were financially vested in advocating for us, as well as giving us a plurality of advice we could draw on. So for us, their money was genuinely only one part of the equation. We didn't do a huge raise. We wanted their contacts, and we wanted their advice. And it turned out to be really, really effective. Now, if they're half decent, they will have very strong opinions. But one of the advantages of having a group of them is you're exposed to a number of different opinions, and ultimately you're just going to make the call. So for me, it's been incredibly valuable. Some of these guys have huge egos, and that's what you'd expect. And in one or two cases, parts of their advice were critical, even though it was contradictory between investors. So you're going to still make the call, but I would never say no to advice from somebody who's proven themselves in the market, ever. I might say no to following it, but I'd never say no to hearing it.
How did saying no to following it go?
Badly, to start with, but I think, what I said to this particular investor was, look, I could be wrong on this. I totally hear what you're saying. I'm going to do this anyway. Here's why I'm going to do it. and let's look at this again in a set time period in 6 months. Here are the things I'm going to achieve, boo, boo, boo. Judge me by that at that point, rather than just having a theoretical discussion now about whether I've gone the right way or not. You think I've gone the wrong way? I think I've gone the right way. Some of my other investors think I've gone the right way. Let's reassess in 6 months. But giving them something objective to hold on to, just like, it makes you look like you're a competent pilot, even if they think you're flying in the wrong direction.
And has 6 months passed to determine, okay?
We have 2 more months on this new direction. So far, my numbers are looking good. So hopefully the plane will land in its intended place.
Cool.
Yeah, I think I completely agree that when you're selling part of your company, you should be selling it for more than just money. You need, the advice and counsel and guidance and all kinds of help that investors can provide is totally invaluable if you get the right people. We had a sort of the opposite experience in some ways, at least with our Series A round. It took sort of was unusual that one VC took the entire round, and it's it's been the best thing that's ever happened to the company, truly not from money perspective. It was Andreessen Horowitz, and Ben Horowitz joined the board of the company and has been completely essential, best possible investor. It's like anyone who's raising money and get Ben interested. It's they are the least meddlesome but most helpful crowd in the world, and it's like don't tell Ben, but it's like it'd be worth even if you hadn't given us money, giving him some of the company to help us because it's that valuable, and they can provide we'll go to Ben with sort of anything any kind of dicey question, strategy, internal. He's another good thing about from our perspective at least, investors, we were really, I think I wasn't even there when they raised the A, but they were attracted, and I think it's been borne out to these Mark and Ben ran companies. They're not sort of serial investors for their whole lives. They ran big companies, and so they there's as you grow you encounter so many issues about organization, organizational structure, about recruiting, about just any kind of external internal conflicts, and having access to somebody who really has thought a lot about this stuff and successfully navigated so much of it is truly invaluable. So,
are there any resources out there other than investors, whether it be books or podcasts or just places you guys go that have helped you that you'd like to share?
I mean, I'll take a lesson from any guy off the street that, I think echoing what Hamish was saying, you have to be receptive to hearing people's comments, for better or worse. Now, whether or not you choose to follow that is your internal strategy, but you really do need to be receptive to hearing criticisms. And I think that being involved in a startup company, openness and honesty with your fellow co-founders is really crucial. Don't pussyfoot around. If there's issues, direct those issues internally to the relevant people and get them solved, because it's just like in a relationship or something. It's better not to have passive aggressive feelings towards your work associates. So I think that's always beneficial. Regarding specific places, SCORE, the SBA's initiative early on, was very helpful. Attending relevant trade conferences, things like that. Legal professionals always have vast numbers of contacts that they can direct you to. I think those are some of the bigger ones for us, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we met before, you asked me about podcasts. I've never gotten advice from podcasts, yeah, I actually have not gotten that deep into it. I know that our founders, particularly Tom, has been super in there. I should try and find the list. Maybe I can find it. So he has a number of like he actually is interested in management books. I never thought that anyone would ever be interested in management books, but there are a couple that he's really into and thinks really do provide a tremendous amount of helpful guidance. And so I think that you can. I was surprised that when I arrived that that was something that he was into, and that I trust him. So I'm going to read it once.
I guess I'd make one broader point, which is one of the problems when you're an entrepreneur is that it depends very much on your business, but if not everyone is a potential customer, because they're not, everyone is a potential route to a potential customer, if you see what I mean. And so one of the challenges is when you're out there networking and taking advice, you always, to some extent, have your game face at least half on, right? And I mean, that's great because that's your job and it gets customers and clients and works things out. But you also need a sort of, to put it one way, you need a safe place where you can talk to other people about what's going on below the surface, where you can say, well, occasionally I'm not feeling that confident about that. And that's not something that comes across on the surface. Everybody's out there and putting forward a narrative which you need to, in order to succeed. You need to have your staff confident, you need to have your partners confident with you. But for all of us, unless you're completely lying, if there are times to how am I going to make, particularly early on, how will I make payroll this month for all these staff when this hasn't happened the way I wanted it to, or how's this going to happen? And you want to have some people who aren't just business network colleagues that you can say, hey, this is what's happening, how did you go about solving this? So you need both sets of networks, would be my point.
That's a great point. I'd love to open it to you guys if you have questions or discussion points. Please jump in.
Okay. That's a question for Jonathan. You mentioned that the technology you use came out of the university, correct? I've heard a lot about some companies having a challenge with technology commercialization, both from institution to the marketplace. I wonder if you could talk about your story. How did you actually transition effectively? Do you have resources that are institutional at the university, and more market-based folks who help pull it out? Was there a balance?
Well, I think the difficulties are always in the IP. Ownership issues are resounding, through everything that you do within the university space. So I think that for us, some of our technology was developed on university grants. Others of it, we devised ways that we could rent certain pieces of equipment. So long as you're renting it, anything that's developed there is your own. And I think that forming those agreements early on is really important, and working with universities to have a culture for doing that sort of thing is also very important. Sadly, I don't think that the state universities in New York, which we're affiliated with, have done that as much as, say, an MIT or something like that, where they have legal people, teams of legal people that can help you through this process. But being, again, honest with yourselves, honest with the university early on in what you want to do with the intellectual property, what's the competitive space that exists out there, what's really the value of that IP. Lots of university research never gets to commercialization because there's either not a direct path or the business development effort that you require to get there. I think that's a sad thing. And I actually see an emergence of a lot of nonprofit organizations that's directly in that space, and I work with a couple of them, that is helping so that federal research money doesn't just get spent on intellectual discourse, it actually gets spent on creating a product that addresses a market need and gets it to market. Commercialization for us is difficult because once you move away from renting time on university equipment, that then means you have to go back and buy all that equipment. And for us, that's millions of dollars of sunk cost. So again, that's where you really need the investor community to back you and have shown that, okay, I've done my due diligence here. We understand what the market potential looks like. And we've talked to clients, off-take partners, that sort of thing. So you do have to do that internally. We've gotten no assistance from the university when it comes to taking that next step. But again, structuring it within the university environment was fine. I want to pay this for this, and we have the IP, and that was a relatively straightforward process.
Anyone else?
don't know if it's as relevant for maybe more for Hamish and Rap Genius, but sorry.
Good branding. That's what we're going for.
That's actually his username.
But you don't have technical backgrounds, but how did you find, especially when you were first starting out, the technical person to come on board to really build your platform? And did you already have capital that you could offer them and just give them a salary, or were you just giving them a part of your company and saying, have faith in me and we're going to build this together? What was that process?
The second answer. Yeah, it's a very good question though. What did we do? So we were very lucky. We picked up a guy initially who was with Linden Labs, who helped create Second Life. In fact, he ran all their virtual currency stuff there. So at the time, this was front page of Time magazine. Everybody's forgotten Second Life now, but you have not
Second Life is
Life,
cool.
right?
That's
Yeah,
cool.
it's very cool. And he was amazing.
Linden
$11, exactly. But it was the first virtual millionaires who became real millionaires were created through that site. So we knew he was hot stuff. When it came to attracting him, we hadn't done our raise, but we knew it's chicken and the egg, right? In order to get the raise, you have to have a good team, and having somebody on board who's like your key technical person when you are not that person is often essential. It was about having a very, very clear story and setting up where we're going to go while acknowledging that inevitably business is limited. But setting up, I think, a clear enough vision, what his part would be in that vision, and definitely, what a incentive structure would look like. And that clearly, if you're early stage and if you haven't built something and you don't have a user base, that's got to include equity. Now, what helps make that credible, because X% of nothing is a big fat nothing, is if you have already built a lot of the business credibility around that, which you can do, for instance, by bringing on, even if you don't have a board yet, you can bring on an advisory board. And we'd build up some really credible business figures that we could bring along. In fact, we brought some of them along to meet Alex at the time. And that makes a huge difference. It's like, so we're working with Lord Stevenson. He chairs the UK's largest bank. He's a fairly credible kind of guy. If he backs us, he thinks our vision is credible, it's probably worth your while investing a bit of time in this too. So that's how we did it. We bootstrapped credibility through bringing on the people that we could as the non-technical people, and then translated that across into a realistic offer around equity.
And that was even before you had any money,
Yes.
like raised. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I had the pleasure of not being there for this, but I mean, for us, for Rap Genius, it was, we were fortunate enough that, there are three founders. One of them was technical and built the product and was the only engineer for a long time. But this is like, whenever I talk to anybody who's thinking about sort of trying to start a technology company, this comes up all the time. It's sort of a standard thing, which is just like, especially like friends who are in business school, they have ideas, they want to do things, and it's like, but what about the technical thing? And it's unfortunately, I think it's absolutely the most important thing in the world, and I think that it's like, what I tell anyone is that they should devote all of their resources at the beginning to figuring this problem out, to finding a co-founder. I think ideally you don't even want, just hiring like a director of engineering who's like, I think you want someone who is in it from the beginning, is completely believes in the thing. And I mean, the hard thing is, you need to be able to sell. You have to really believe in what you're trying to build, and you have to be able to convince somebody else to believe in it. And I don't think there's any like super shortcut to doing that. But that I think is what you have to do. You just have to, and it's like, I've talked to people, unless you have massive independent resources, you need to provide your first. I mean, it's almost like funny. I think that people think that you can have your first and most critical technical person, if you're building a technology company, not have equity in the company. It's like, of course they need equity in the company. And it's like, and I've talked to people who were like, I don't want to give up any equity in the company. It's just like, it's very short-sighted. Because right now, at Rap Genius, where we have money and we have a big community and whatever, it's like, it's still super hard. It's like so it's going to be even harder. So it's like, you need to be ready to really bring on. If you don't have someone already, I think you need to be willing to fully embrace somebody as as an equal partner with you. If you're building a technology company, you need people who can actually build it. So.
I have a question. It's a little bit more esoteric, and so I apologize. Feel free not to answer. But as I think about it, in this room, you have a particular set of people, right? Especially for the Gates folks and the various other folks from their own British experiences, very academically minded people, very industrious, hardworking, motivated people, but who come from that mindset of I want to win, I want to get an A, that's where you all came from originally. With that mindset, and I've heard this from a few people, anecdotes like, that's all well and good, but once you go into a startup, you enter this world that you guys are talking about, it takes a different set of skills. It's threshold, it's table stakes to be smart and capable, but that's not what's going to make you successful. We heard this a little bit earlier, I think, with Hamish, but we can hear a little bit about what your experience are. We have Yale Law up there, we have a bunch of Cambridges, we have all sorts of impressive academic backgrounds. But what is the thing that's different about what you're trying to do? Again, you go to a consulting firm or you go into the investing world, it's a little bit more typical, like, oh, you're smart, that matters. But this sounds like it's different. And I just want to get your guys' perspectives on how that's helpful, but maybe even also how it's hurtful, and the way you have to sort of adapt yourselves and your approaches to be successful in what you're doing.
I think being an entrepreneur is definitely a lifestyle. This is dovetailing on one of Hamish's comments from earlier. It's, lots of people talk about how, a startup, or you're an entrepreneur, you just must have crazy work hours and things. You guys work at law firms and other things. Yeah, I'm betting you're not 9-to-5s either. It's not about the hours you put in. That's an outdated model. I think that being an entrepreneur, it has to be part of your DNA. You have to be on all the time thinking about it. You don't have to put in the massive sum of hours, but you have to be thinking about what you're doing and how every interaction throughout your day may lead to a client or something of that nature. In that way, I thought that it was actually fairly similar to my graduate career, because as a PhD student, that's also what you're doing. If I got to go into lab at 2 in the morning, that's what happens, because that's when you have access on this piece of equipment. Similarly, if I have to take a business call at 2 in the morning, that's just part of my life now. So actually, I found the transition between academia and, or at least research academia, and the sort of entrepreneurial space to be not too big of a culture clash. Having intellectual interests that are broad is certainly hugely different when you're talking about doing a PhD to becoming an entrepreneur. That was the biggest change for me. A PhD is a very focused activity, whereas as an entrepreneur, while I'm certainly not professionally certified in any way, I have to understand the roles of an actuary. I have to understand legal affairs. I have to be able to do the technical stuff. I have to be a marketer. I have to do PR. You become a much broader person by becoming an entrepreneur and learning from more fields. And sometimes that requires, when I wrote up our pro forma, that required, okay, go read 3 books on accounting and general, tax law. Okay, fine, I had to do it. So that just gets done, and that gets incorporated into your general sum of knowledge. That's what I felt about it, at least. That's how I changed most significantly.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that I think there are issues, with sort of the academic mindset, the Gates crowd. It's smartest people I ever met were probably the folks I met on the Gates thing. It's obviously there's no problem there. I think though that it inclines people to sort of seek perfection and to like you're saying, I think people have been high performing folks and are just want. I think more than just being high performing though, I think people put a tremendous amount of pressure on themselves to have anything that sort of comes out their shop, comes out the door, saying you wrote something, you're proposing something, you're anything, you want it to be perfect. and you want it to like, you know, you can spend a tremendous amount of time. And I mean, one thing I found in my own sort of academic career was just like, the more experience I had, you know, when I was in college, I was a freshman in college, I spent like, you know, I would write my papers like the night before they were due, or like, you know, spend a couple hours on it. By the time I was in law school, I was writing things, you know, I was taking a month to write things, and when you become a, you know, PhD student or postdoc or whatever, you're spending a year on something. And that's just, that inclination, I think, is, yeah, it's just unfortunately that's not the pace at which things operate when you're trying to sort of build most companies, and you have to be prepared to, it's sort of a cliche in the startup world, but this idea of just like shipping things, it's not just code that you need to ship, it's anything. It's like, you need to make a deal, you need to propose something, you need to get out of something, you know, you gotta just get it out. You gotta figure something out, write something, first drafts, it's a big thing actually, Rap Genius, it's like, first draft is everything. Write a first draft no matter what. Anytime you're doing something, you want to propose a change in the way we do something at the company, or you want to propose some kind of deal or how we should approach something, it's like, write something. And it truly doesn't need to be perfect. It's terrible. I know it. Everyone will love you for writing something and just doing something, you know, put something down. Like, yeah, I mean, this almost connects also to sort of the founding moment, I think, which is another thing that happens when people are, the two things that happen when people are talking, like that I've talked to when they want to start companies, they're saying, how do I find a technical person? I don't want to give them anything, but how do I find them? And then also, like, how do I make sure that nobody steals my idea? You know, like, and there's like endless NDAs. NDAs are stupid, I think. You know, I think NDAs are, non-disclosure agreements. You know, people are always trying to sign NDAs, and it's like, most NDAs are probably not enforceable. It's like, and my point is always like, nobody's going to steal your idea. There's like, even if you have some kind of idea that is intrinsically valuable, it's just the execution. And this is, again, also a cliche in the world, but it's like, truly, 99% of anything you do is going to be in the execution. It's the same thing where, and I think it is a little bit at odds with the academic mindset where, you know, there's tremendous value on on ideas. And, you know, but it's really about, there's just like, the person who executes it, the person who writes the thing and actually sends the email or ships the code or whatever is the valuable person. It's not the person with the idea. Like, you can't be an ideas person at a startup.
Unless it's a real late stage startup.
Yeah, maybe you can find like a nice little post at Google or something.
I know some people have to get out of here, so we can definitely continue our conversations. We have this room for a while this morning, so if you don't have to rush off to work, please stay around. And thank you all. Thank you, wonderful panel, and thank you all so much for coming. Thank you, David, and the Gates Cambridge Alumni Association.
Thank you very much.